Good evening everyone and welcome back to the World Online Racing YouTube channel for another round of this PC Tier 1 season. Only 2 rounds left to go in Season 18. Can you believe it's gone by this quickly? I'm sure that, well, I know that I can't. But, of course, today the big thing on the agenda is that Brendan Lee can wrap up the title here this evening if he finishes higher than P7, or if Tom Manley doesn't take a win. My name, of course, is Dan Field. It says Richie on the bottom. Of course, that is not the case today. I'm being joined by Sappytron. Sappy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Glad to have made it. I say nick of time. A bit of a story to tell, but that's for another day. It's great to be here. It's great to have the opportunity to talk and sort of see these drivers in action. And as you say, this could be championship-defining battles and really bringing it down to the wire tonight. So I'm very excited.
Absolutely. Brendan Lee is running away with things at the minute, and I'll have a look. We'll actually bring up the standings in just a moment's time. Of course, I'm a little bit rushed off my feet this evening. If you want an excuse, I've been writing an essay that's due in like the next 2 days or something. So I lost track of time, and so that's why we're on so late. Q1 is already underway. We'll have a look at the results from last time out in Austria. It was Joris Krozen with a fantastic victory, a last lap move on Istvan Pukki and Julian Klaffenbach. And he secured that win. Istvan Pukki finished in P2. Ismail Fassi was third, just 3 thousandths clear of Klaffenbach in his home Grand Prix. Brendan Lee got a penalty removed. He ended up in P5. John Evans as well in P6. 7th was Jan Halliday. 8th, Tom Manley. 9th, Reese Linton. And rounding out that top 10 is Duncan Hoffland. And in the standings, well, it is just the story of one man, Brendan Lee. 158 points at the very top of things. He's miles away from second place competitor Tom Manley, sat on just 113 points here this evening. Thomas Ronhart is in third on 90. Jan Watmir, not seen him for a very long time, is on 77 points. Ismail Fassi close to him on 56, just 2 points ahead of Istvan Pukki. Then Joris Krozen in P7 on 50, Klaffenbach in 8th on 38, and then Otis Lawrence and Nicholas Longe, who we've not really seen all that much this season, still sit 9th and 10th. But Sappytron, tonight, Brendan Lee, if he's crowned champion, which looks very, very likely at the minute, he'll have fully deserved it.
Yeah, it's the ruthless consistency, the high placements, round after round after round. That's really what's put him in this kind of confident position. And say both the Kick Sauber drivers really bringing their A game, I've got to say. So you've got Ron Haar in the third place and really supporting each other as teammates. It's good to see. And it's interesting as well. I'm looking at some of the attendance, and we do have quite a few reserves out track tonight. So last race, 4 out of 10 in the top 10 were reserves. And it looks like we're getting more drivers getting a chance to be on that top step. I think Red Bull and Aston are completely reserve outfits tonight.
I believe they are. I think we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to head straight into the game scene. As I said, we're a little bit behind so far this evening, but you can see some lap times already being notched in with 12 minutes left to go in Q1. Please do, everyone, let me know in the live chat if everything is sorted out okay. We've got 4 drivers already disqualified from Q1, Sappy, which means we're only really going to be losing 1 driver today.
Yeah, it's not every day you see 4 drivers basically making Q1 redundant almost. So we really will only see 1 driver get knocked out in this first session. We've already got a couple of times out on the intertire. It's going to be Will Lewis and Philip Presneder. And just getting some rubber out on the track at this point. So Q1, of course, you don't want to burn your tyre allocations. So it's not uncommon to see those green wall tyres be coming out at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. But Will Lewis and Philip Presneder, the first 2 out on circuit. It's a bit of a ghost town at the minute. And of course, Will Lewis was a little bit angry at me for not getting in on time. I really did delay the start by maybe about 5 minutes. So big apologies to all the drivers. But Will said he'd forgive me if I predicted him for pole position here tonight. So that's who I'm going with, as always, really, whenever he is on the grid. But so far, not really that many times being notched in. I'm looking at the grid and I'm seeing some interesting names that we haven't seen in a while or haven't seen at all so far this season. Declan Barrett stands out to me. We haven't seen him really all that much this year. And Angelo Di Ortenzo, I have never seen that name before in WOR PC Tier 1. Sappy, is this a driver you're familiar with?
Yeah, it's a driver I've seen around the paddock in various other tiers and different settings as well. They're a driver that really knows how to put the pace down and put down some pressure. The consistency can occasionally wobble, and that really has been sort of their downfall at points, especially when it comes to race trim. They can get themselves in a little bit of trouble if they don't keep careful. But when it comes to quali pace and when it comes to fighting wheel to wheel and holding their own for short bursts, Diotenzio is definitely one to watch out for.
Absolutely. Watch out for Diotenzio making his debut here in WOR PC Tier 1 this evening. We do see some very familiar names on this grid. Nicholas Longe really hasn't shown up all that much this season. Yoni Tormund, it's good to see him on the grid today. Josh Edo as well. I rarely get to say that name anymore. I don't know how many times he's actually raced so far this season, but tell you what, this is a very strong grid here this evening. Xander Van Dyken is another name I'm very excited to see. Of course, the very first console champion, if I'm not mistaken, the first PlayStation champion back in season 9 or 10. I believe, someone do correct me if I'm wrong, that was like on F1 2020 or something before he made his way over to the PC platform, as we do have some activity out in the pit lane. That is a very blue car. Is that Tom Manley or is that Declan Barrett? It is indeed Barrett. Declan Barrett first out on circuit.
Yeah, he's going to be just seeing where the track takes him. I can see he's on the soft tire actually now, so he's bucking the trend of only going out on the green walls at this stage of the qualifying sessions, and maybe seeing where he can sort of test himself and see where he can get.
Yeah, absolutely. Declan Barrett, excited to see how he can do here this evening. He's a driver that on his day really can fight in the top 10 and be a dark horse for a pole position. So watch out for Declan Barrett as he takes to this brilliant Zandvoort circuit. We've not really spoken about it so far this evening, Sappy. This is a fantastic track in my opinion. It is very short, of course, but it's not like Austria where it's just filled with loads and loads of long DRS straights. There's only really 2 overtaking opportunities around this circuit, down through turn 11 just here and in towards that first corner, but you've got to think about that first sector, weaving your way through in that twisty part of the track. That could make for some fantastic side-by-side dueling if they can't get the move done in turn number 1.
Yeah, and you've got to think as well, the camber, of course, one of the other defining features of the circuit. That's definitely going to make a change to how these racers drive. You've got 19-degree camber to the left on turn 3, and then you've got 13 and 14 with an 18-degree camber to the right. So those little undulations, that changes in the road surface, that's going to have to make the drivers think about how they're putting down the power, how they're controlling their car, and where they can afford to take a bit more steering angle, but being careful on the exit as they could otherwise catch themselves off guard.
Absolutely, as both RBs have been the first 2 to come out on circuit, and both of them are going for a second warm-up lap. I think that might be a familiar trend, as yes, Brendan Lee is slow as well. He's got his RHE teammate of Julian Klaffenbach behind him last time by a very strong P4 in his home Grand Prix. Now they've made their way over to the Netherlands, which is of course the home Grand Prix of many a driver on this grid. Xander Van Dyken, Joris Krozen, I believe, is Dutch, and of course Thomas Ronhard getting himself disqualified from qualifying, along with Ishmael Fassi, Nicholas Longe and Istvan Pukki, all deciding not to qualify for this race. Sappy, that is going to make for some very interesting... It's going to make for a very interesting grid order, but I'm really interested to see how they can actually make the moves around this circuit. It's nothing like Austria where you can just use the DRS on one straight and then blast past on the next. These guys have got to be very methodical with their overtakes.
Yeah, they've got to be very careful as well with how they place their cars, and especially through those first few laps, they're going to have to be very aware of the drivers around them. A little bit too close, especially with some of the cambering around the track, is going to be crucial in how they fight and how they move themselves up the grid. But we're seeing the times absolutely flying through, and it's 108s across the board. Shanika Clay and Ruben Pedreño 3 milliseconds apart, and Jack West 3 milliseconds behind that.
Yeah, wow, Shanika Clay, he's had a very, very difficult time on the F1 24 game, and he's had a very difficult season. Lots of incidents, of course. On the last lap, last time out in Austria, was involved in a spin, and I'm seeing a lot of questions about where Jarno Ottmeier is this evening. He has not been here since like round number 6. Of course, he was doing Ironman League and PSGL. and he didn't feel like doing 3 races a week. I feel like we have to explain this every single time, but yes, he's not here. However, you do have 20 other fantastic drivers on the grid, so please do enjoy them this evening as Tom Manley comes across the line with a 1 minute 8.253, displacing Shanika Clay, and the championship leader Brendan Lee slots behind his closest adversary by just 0.03 of a second. In the drop zone at the minute, it is Angelo Di Ortenzio, and he is in that final sector now, so we can see what he's doing in the all black and blue car as he flies through turn at number 13 and 14, this steep banked curb. I believe it's Ari Lundijk, the two-time Indy 500 or two-time IndyCar, two-time Indy 500 winner. That's what it's named after. As Angelo Di Ortenzio gets himself into P13. Philip Presnader then will come into the pit lane, not completing a representative lap time. Same goes for Will Lewis, meaning that Julian Klaffenbach, he has got to be careful on that lap.
I think the drivers are aiming for a 0.3 at this stage. If they can get themselves in a 0.3, they know that they are safe, but burning a bit too much on the tyres can be very costly as you get to Q2 and Q3. So even in this first session, where there's technically only one spot up for drops, there's still some strategy and some thinking going on there. Presnader and Will Lewis are two drivers who need to make a serious improvement because those are far from representative laps for themselves. And looking at the rest of the field, it looks like everyone is concentrating around that early 8.3.
Yeah, it seems like that is going to be where the cutoff is. And interestingly enough, we've got in the pit lane at the minute Josh Edo. He's decided not to retire the car just yet on a 1 minute 8.313. And Jack West, okay, never mind. I was going to say that Josh Edo, he's not retired. Jack West, 1,000th quicker than him, has indeed. But yes, Josh Edo, he believes he is safe into the next session. Tom Manley and Brendan Lee, they have got nothing to worry about in this session as Angelo Di Ortenzio will come into the pit lane now. And I wonder, what is that cutoff going to be? We've got so many drivers on very close lap times at the minute. Joris Krozen is in P7 and and what seems to be in a safe position, but Di Ortenzio is just a few spots from relegation and out of this session, and the gap between them is just 1/10 of a second. So very fine margins here at Zandvoort, as we were to expect. We've got Philip Presnader first out on circuit. It is imperative, Sappy, that he gets his lap clean.
Yeah, he has to nail this lap. There really is no substitute. He's got to get this one. He's got to get the most out of that space on track as we see more drivers retire, knowing that they are pretty much safe. If you've got a 0.3, I think it's safe to say that you're in for a decent Q2 chance. Only ones I'd really worry about is currently those bottom 5 who remain. Anyone down from John Evans, they may want to think about going for another lap because the margins aren't just tenths of a second. They're not hundredths. They are single milliseconds. I mean, look at the difference between Sander van Dijken and Joni Tormela.
Absolutely. It's literally the most minute of errors, which could be the difference between elimination in Q1 and getting himself into Q2. But I think having 4 drivers already retired is going to relieve a lot of the pressure from the drivers ahead. Joris Krozen, he can just retire because Declan Barrett is he's done a slower lap time than him. And of course, he's not out on circuit as Philip Presnader gets his run underway. At the minute, the unlucky chosen one in that drop zone, he is flying his way through the first sector now, and he's got to get this lap absolutely perfect. Of course, on a 1 minute 11.341, this was a lap time that he set on his intermediate run of tyres, and of course he invalidated or just backed off on his slick set, so it's another fresh set of tyres strapped on to his McLaren Senna-esque livery, and he's already improving by about 0.8 of a second, but he has backed off on this run, so not happy with how the first sector went despite his large improvement on his previous best time, as you would expect, on a 1:11.3. But Philip, he's going for another run here.
Well, I think he's got to really just commit at this point. He hasn't got any other option, and this is the drop zone. It's not like he can go back in and go for a fresh set. He wouldn't get out in time. So even if those softs have taken a bit of rubber and aren't going to be at technically peak performance anymore, this is really all he's got to go off of. So it is now or never. Just make the best of the situation you currently have. And even if you can just get a half a second improvement, that does technically put him ahead of Will Lewis and out of the drop zone.
Well, we'll check back in on Philip Presnader with a minute left to go in this session. John Evans has posted a purple Sector 2 and he's flying through turn number 14 and 15. Gets the DRS open mid-corner. Slight twitch at the apex. He'll get the run now down in towards that start-finish line. What's it going to be for John Evans? He will improve only marginally. Puts himself within 2,000 of Joni Tormala. And there is Joni to the very top of the order. A 1 minute 8.199. A fantastic run coming out from him there. Will Lewis is coming across the line now. He will slot himself into P9 and safe into the next session. Xander Van Dyken will come into the pit lane. This could be a scary spot for him as Angelo D'Ortenzio will be the next one to come across the line. It's actually going to be Klaffenbach the next one to come across the line. Van Dyken will retire in the pit lane. Here comes Klaffenbach to the line. He will not find an improvement. He is going once again. D'Ortenzio, I believe, is also opting to do the exact same strategy, which leaves Jake Benham improving ever so slightly. He doesn't need this time, but he's going for gold here.
Yep, no substitute for the best. And it looks like we're going to see more push from the rest of the field. The checkered flag has officially fallen, and Benham is just going to be beaten by the flag drop. So it's P11 for him at best, as more drivers are going to be making their way through. John Evans now coming around, and it looks like this has been an abandon for him. He's not going to be committing 100% to this one. But P13 is going to be a risky position. So Presnader does get into P14 with a 0.410. So all eyes on D'Ortenzio and Klaffenbach right now. So the battle for the two that have got themselves acquainted in Tier 2 and below. And they are going to have a bit more on the line with this battle, because this is a bit more of a personal one between those two in particular.
Bit of a slide for Klaffenbach as he exits the final corner. Has that ruined his run? He'll come across the line, finds the improvement, but not enough to jump ahead of D'Ortenzio, who gets himself into 11th position. And Julian Klaffenbach on circuit with the Ishmael Fassi's penalty applied. I believe before any stewards' decisions last time out, he was on the podium, and now, just 1 week later in the Netherlands, he has been eliminated in Q1. The sole driver who set a lap time in this session to be eliminated from this qualifying procedure. He is out, unfortunately. Philip Presnader lives to fight another day, despite surviving in just 15th position. But how about that? When was the last time you saw Joni Tormala topping a session? A fantastic 1 minute 8.199 from him. Tom Manley in P2 on a 1 minute 8.253, with Brendan Lee just 300s behind him. The rest of the grid is as follows: Shanika Clay, Rune Pedreño, Jack West, Josh Edo, Joris Krozen, Will Lewis, Declan Barrett, D'Ortenzio, Jake Benham. We got Xander Van Dyken, John Evans, and Philip Presnader, with Klaffenbach, Pookie, Longe, Fassi, and Ron Hart all eliminated from Q1. Of course, Klaffenbach, very unfortunate to see himself get eliminated. And I gotta say, that twitch we saw at the final corner, I think that's what undid it for him.
Yeah, just that little twitch and the loss of the grip on the back end. That was really what undid that run. And I think if they had held it together and they just kept that cool head and maybe not, say, stab the throttle, because it looks like that might be what they've done, I think they could have looked at just scraping themselves out of that danger zone. But in the end, they are going to be the only retiree from Q1, and then we move on to Q2. So this is where the drivers are going to have to start up the game, where they're going to really have to push from the start of the session, from the go, and where they were previously running inters and putting some rubber down early, can see it's a sea of cars immediately jumping out on circuit.
I do love how the season's progressed, and we've used these F1 wildcards since round number 3 of this season. I love how all of the liveries have diversified throughout this season. We started off with a plethora of white cars from drivers not actually customizing them. Jake Benham is the only one who hasn't bothered to customize his car on this grid. The rest of them have all found some way to vary their car. They're using the in-game liveries, like Xander Van Dyken, Jack West, and Philip Presnader just exiting the pit now. And some of them, they've adopted their team's livery, like John Evans. He's gone with a nice Ferrari colour scheme. Same goes for Joni Tormala and Josh Edo. Well, Yoni's got the Red Bull car, as does Josh Edo, despite neither of them racing for the team anymore. And then Declan Barrett, Tom Manley, they've gone with the RB. So I love how, as the course of this season has progressed, Sappy, we've seen all these cars come to fruition.
Yeah, it's a little moment of expression and a unique opportunity, I think, for the drivers. And say what you will about the situation with the F1 World Cars, one thing that it has given rise to is drivers to give a little bit of their own personal flavour and their own style to their cars and to their driving. They've got a chance to not only represent their team and their colours, but also either whether you're going for a special edition livery of your certain team, if that's available, or you're making something completely custom. You can sort of give it a bit of your own flavour.
Yeah, absolutely. Jack West, of course, using the in-game Senna livery. I think this was very recently added onto the F1 24 game. I've not seen it before this week. I've not really kept up with the F1 24 news as of late, pretty much for the entirety of this game cycle, but I do like seeing it on the grid. Some of the official sponsors coming back into the fray, and of course it's just a recolored McLaren livery that we see in real life Formula 1 as Jack West comes across the line. 1 minute 8.492 from him. Joris Krozen puts himself in P3 as Shanika Clay jumps to the very top of the order. Loads and loads of cars are now coming across the line. Here's Will Lewis slotting himself into P2 just behind Brendan Lee. John Evans is about to come across the line. Jake Benham with a poor 1 minute 8.9. There is John with a 1 minute 8.234. A great lap time from him there. Tom Manley, former Xbox champion back in season 12. He slots himself into P2. Dion Tenzio down in 13th position and currently out of qualifying. Pedreño had a very strong Q1 showing. However, in Q2, that is not the lap time he would have hoped to have seen. I'll check on the telemetry. Indeed, he was saving all of that, so he is going once again. Philip Presreda will be the next one to come across the line. We'll see what he can do as he opens up the DRS, headed through the final corner of Ari Lundijk. Fun fact about him, my mum actually, for some reason, knows him, and that reason being that his son, Ari Lundijk Jr., was on The Bachelor, and you know what? These middle-aged women like to watch. They love to watch the soppy, crappy reality shows. My mum loves it, and she loves Ari Lundijk because of that.
Oh, so well, the small world, eh? So you never know where you can find different personalities, different characters popping up, and you'd be surprised who you can encounter in the most strange of places. One thing that I'm very interested in now is looking at the times already. Even if it is just opening runs here at Q2, we're seeing the grid spread be minimal to none. We're seeing already drivers be just barely separated by single milliseconds. We're seeing Pedreño just come across the line. It's a 0.332, barely behind Tom Manley. John Evans being a bit of an exception right now with a 0.234, but look at the rest of that field. It's barely separated by any meaningful gaps in time whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. As Philip Presreda now comes across the line, where he is going to set a 1 minute 8.473. Everyone's complaining about the stream being laggy. Doesn't seem like anything is happening on my end of things, so maybe just give it a little refresh. Please do let us know in the live chat if everything is okay. Sappy, check on the stream for me. Just let me know if it's okay, because I can't actually see my OBS at the minute. It's really annoying. My second monitor just broke out of nowhere, and so I'm having to go old school. Just one monitor is all I'm using at the minute. But I guess if there's any time for these things to happen, it's now before the race.
Yeah, well, I'll say a couple of frame drops and stutters, but otherwise looking mostly okay. It's just a little bit of inconsistency every now and again.
That's okay then. That's all right. I think sometimes there is just a few frame drops. I know that I'm not overloading my PC or anything, but indeed there is a few lag issues. You can see Declan Barrett, he's zipping all over the place. My internet is quite good where I live in my student accommodation. Well, not my student accommodation, my student house, but it should be all right. Fingers crossed. I do have 3 other people in my flat who also like to play games. Some of them, they're using the internet almost 24/7. So, sometimes it can be a little bit inconsistent, but please do let me know if everything is okay. As we've now got the second run of laps. These should be the most competitive that we have seen so far. And already it has been incredibly close throughout this session. Declan Barrett will round the final corner to be the first one to start a lap, and again he is weaving down that start finish straight, going for a second warm-up lap. And I'm wondering Why is that? Are they trying to burn off some excess fuel around this very, very short circuit? Because, of course, you want to be as light as possible. And around a track like Zandvoort, you can really do these second outlaps very, very efficiently because of how short it is.
Well, it's tough to call because you don't really see the fuel burn strategy as much as you used to at one point because of the changes in the tire wear and the tire model. If you burn fuel and are too aggressive on those tires, the grip that you'll lose will outweigh the amount of time you'll gain from the fuel burn. So it's a tough one to call, and I personally haven't seen it as much as we used to. It's not as prevalent of a strategy. It's still a viable one if you execute it well, and we're seeing Declan Barrett say as he weaves across the track, he's looking to scrub the tyres, maybe to build up a little bit of temperature, potentially, rather than going for explicitly managing tyre wear, just building up those core temps and those surface temps so that they're in the ideal operating window when he crosses the line. We'll have to wait and see with him, but we have seen more drivers now coming up to the line and confirming either their full core laps or some of them just about to finish them off.
I think most drivers are doing that second outlap. Here is Declan Barrett getting his run underway. We're keeping... Okay, there it is. Joris Crozen to the very top of the order. 1 minute 8.157. Let's see if we can check in on anyone else doing a fully fledged lap at the minute. Shanika Clay comes across the line ahead of Joris there. Joni Tormel has slotted himself into P5, I believe that is. Tom Manley to the line. He is doing another outlap. John Evans will pull back into the pit lane. Here comes Josh Edo to the line. What's it going to be for him as he approaches that start finish line? Slots himself into P4. A nice lap there from Josh there. There's Xander Van Dyken in his home Grand Prix on a 1 minute 8.139. A fantastic showing from him so far in qualifying. Jake Benham will be the next one to come across the line now. Headed into the final two corners of turn number 13 and 14. These curves are absolutely killer as Jake Benham runs ever so slightly too wide and invalidates his lap time on the outskirts of the circuit. He'll come across the line to complete the lap, which would have been good enough for P8 as it stood. There is Declan Barrett with a 108.091, the first 108 flat we've seen all session long.
Yep, and absolutely dominating the third sector in particular, really nailing turns 13 and 14 there. I've got to say, quite an impressive run in the late stage. And we're going to see more drivers try to chip away at that time now. As more of them are coming up to the line, we're going to see more of them try to push for time. And many drivers now are starting to make that judgment call. They're having to decide, have I got good enough of a time for Q3, or do I need to push that little bit further? See more of them come through. Jack West, I think he's definitely going to be safe. Is a .085 and a very impressive run.
An RB12 dethroned by Jack West. A great lap time from the Welshman there. Declan Barrett sits in P2 with Tom Manley in third. But there's a very notable name missing from that top three. That is Brendan Lee down in ninth position. Currently safe into Q3 as it stands. However, he is not going to be feeling comfortable with that lap time whatsoever. He's got to come back into the pit lane, strap on a fresh set of rubber and go once again, which is a problem that the likes of Jack West, Declan Barrett and of course Tom Manley do not have to worry about. So for this race this evening, it could be advantage Tom Manley, but of course we'll remind you all of the permutations. Of course, Tom has to win this Grand Prix to stay within contention, and Brendan Lee, if he finishes any higher than 7th or above that Brendan Lee has to finish, he'll automatically win the title. So Tom Manley, he needs every advantage that he can get.
Yep, and that is going to be the main storyline heading into the main event, of course. But as things currently stand here in Q2, we're seeing many drivers peel into the pit lane. Everyone at this stage is going to be resigning themselves to the paddock and deciding whether they need to go out again. Now, if I was Jake Benham, I'd be getting out there straight away personally, because he had good enough for, as you said, at the time, I think it was P8, and that time now would have only got him P14. So with additional bit of track evolution, he needs to get something in his books. He needs to get a good lap in his pocket if he wants any chance to make it through.
Absolutely, with just 3.5 minutes left to go in this session. The bottom five, Joni Tormela, Will Lewis, Philip Presneder, Diotenzio and Jake Benham, very notably on a 108.973. Benham's really struggled in this session. currently down in 15th. His lap time was invalidated, which still wouldn't have been good enough to get himself into the next session. I think actually the only driver he'd be above at the minute is Diortenzio in 14th position. So Benham really has got to pull it out of the bag. With 3 minutes left to go in this session now, we are seeing drivers exiting out onto the circuit. And interestingly enough, Shanika Clay, who's just 300ths off the back of Jack West, he believes he needs to come out once again. And you look at these deltas on your screen. Josh Ito is down in P8 at the minute and currently in a pretty treacherous position. He's less than a tenth away from Jack West at the minute, so I'd say maybe everyone needs to come out into the circuit.
Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to leave it to chance at this point. The timings are so minute and marginal, and they're no doubt probably looking at their individual sector times, seeing where they've maybe had personal practice and personal bests in sector 1, 2, 3, and asking themselves, where can I make up time? And is it going to be worth the additional effort to make up said time over just conserving myself for Q3? And it's clear that nobody, with the exception of West, is going to leave that kind of thing up to chance. I say West is the only one who really can afford to definitively make that choice to retire out. But the rest of the field, they don't want to take any unnecessary risks, and I don't blame them.
I mean, how many drivers, how is it really likely that 10 drivers are going to improve over Jack West and knock him out of qualifying? I don't see it to be very likely at all. Mistakes will happen and drivers are going to struggle to get a 1 minute 8.085. It's the fastest time we've seen all day long so far, but everyone, all 14 who have remained out on circuit, they're going to try their hardest to de-seat Jack West at the very top of the order. Of course, it's not really important where you finish in Q2 because, of course, everyone in Q3 has the exact same chance at pole position. When the slate is wiped clean, you've just got to get yourself into the top 10. Shanika Clay at the minute, he is safe into the next part of qualifying, backing off on this lap with 1 minute 15 left to go. It seems like most drivers are pulling off to the side of the road. There is one car. Is that Ruben Pedreño? Indeed it is. Doesn't seem to be a fan of the two outlaps is Ruben. He is headed through the final corner now to complete his final run of qualifying. What is it going to be for Ruben? He'll open up that DRS and come across the line now. What is his time going to be? Currently on a 1 minute 8.167, sets a 1 minute 8.031 and gets himself ahead of Jack West.
And that is going to be the start of the dominoes falling. Pedreño with a really solid run. 30 seconds on the clock here in this qualifying session. Drivers are pushing. Drivers are doing the best that they can with the situation at hand. And now everyone is going to be full guns blazing as we head up to the start-finish line for the finalization of these runs here. So John Evans going to be going for the start of his lap, just about making the checkered flag. Everyone else is going to be very quickly following suit. Benham is going to make it across the line. 10 seconds to go. Barely making it in the nick of time is going to be Joris Krozen, just with about 8 seconds left to go, and the checkered flag has now fallen. So this is final chances. This is game on for everyone out on track. Shanika Clay leads and is going to be very quickly coming up to turn 13.
Up by about half a tenth on his lap. Shanika Clay now through the final two corners. What is it going to be for Shanika? Has had a very difficult season so far. Would love a chance at pole position. He will come across the line now and slots himself just ahead of Jack West behind Ruben Pedreño. Here's Xander Van Dyken, not improving on his run. We've got Will Lewis headed up towards the line, following behind, I believe that was Yoni Tormala, down in P10. Brendan Lee will come across the line and eliminate Yoni Tormala. Josh Ito sets himself into P9. We've got a few more coming across the line. John Evans, can he eliminate the championship leader? Indeed he will. Brendan Lee out of qualifying. What about Tom Manley and Declan Barrett? Tom Manley will be the next one to come across the line, slots himself into that P1 position. Declan Barrett will make it a 1-2 for RB. Joris Krozen, the last one to come across the line, will put himself into P10 and eliminates Josh Ito from this session. It is Ito in 11th, Brendan Lee 12th, Yoni Tormala 13th, 14th Presnader, and Diortenzio eliminated in 15th. And the big story there, the championship leader Brendan Lee out in Q2 with his championship rival Tom Manley, who needs every single point that he can muster. He sets himself into P1, just 5 thousandths clear of Declan Barrett, his teammate in P2. Pedreño is a further 100th back from Declan. Look at those deltas. Will Lewis in 6th position is less than a 10th off of Tom Manley's time. Josh Edo less than 2/10, and he's eliminated from this session. Sappy, we are in for an absolute treat heading into Q3.
I have to say, though, I'm surprised to see Brendan Lee down in P12, but maybe he's not putting as many stakes into this race. You said it yourself with the permutations. You've got yourself a situation where any better than, or 7th or above, is going to be a championship wrap for him. So maybe he's not exactly feeling that pressure at this point in time, and they're not pushing as hard as he would have in another qualifying session where it wasn't as locked up.
Yeah, absolutely. As we are loading now into Q3, let's have a little look at the grid. They're all in now. I do believe everything is showing up. Indeed, it is. So I can pull us back in to the game scene, and you can see all 10 drivers. Make your picks now for who you think is going to take pole position. I see lots of people complaining about the lag. I will close some apps down if that really does make things better, but nothing's coming up on OBS, so I really can't say that you know, it is lagging, because it simply isn't on my end of things. It doesn't matter how quick your PC is or whatever, it just matters about your internet connection, and nothing's happening on my end. My internet is fine here this evening, so I'm not I've got no way I can actually fix this.
Well, let's see what the drivers can make of this situation then, as we've now got a quickfire Q3 underway, and immediately West and Pedreño are going to be making their way out to the circuit, wasting not even a second. They were, as soon as we were in the session, as soon as we were in play, they were already exiting that pit lane. They were already getting themselves out on track. They need a lap in the pocket to make sure that they know where they stand and how they can push.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got just 10 minutes left to go. Please do, everyone, get your predictions in the live chat. We know who mine is, and he is in this session, so I'm very glad to say I'm saying Will Lewis will take pole position in this one. Sappy, which way are you going as Jack West locks up, heading in towards turn number 1, sends himself into the gravel. A critical error for him there.
I'm not so much bargaining for forgiveness, but I am going to be keeping an eye on Pedreño. We've seen them put down some really solid times, and I have to say, they're a driver that I have been watching with curiosity over this session. They have those flashes of brilliance, and we are seeing that come into fruition here in Quali. So, I don't know. Pedreño is one I'm keeping my eye on, and as far as early laps are concerned, himself and West are going to be setting the benchmark for the rest of the field. So I'm curious to see what comes out here.
Absolutely. As Pedreño is on his run in that second sector, a very fun part of the circuit. These long-winded corners that loop back on each other. I really do enjoy it. And then, of course, this DRS straight heading in towards turn number 11. That is, of course, where we are going to see a lot of overtakes being made, mostly in towards turn number 1, but a decent handful of them definitely into that heavy braking zone in through the chicane there. We could see some very interesting battles. Maybe elbows will be pulled out as Pedreño will return to the pit lane. And that leaves just Declan Barrett out on circuit. It's been a very slow start to qualifying 3 here, Slappy.
Oh, you got to look at the driver's perspective. They're seeing these laps as nothing short of perfection. If they fall short of that, they have to go back in. So what we're seeing is, even when it, to us maybe, from the outside, looked like Pedreño, West both on very good laps, any tiny mistake, even a slight deviation from ideal line, they're coming back in. They are not wasting any time. That decreased time limit, combined with how high stakes this session is, they're going to be jumping back in that pit lane. They're going to get back out on those second runs as soon as possible.
Absolutely, as Declan Barrett will get his first lap underway, although I believe he is going to weave, yes, as we've seen so much from him so far in this qualifying session, he will weave and complete a second outlap. So very slow start to Q3 at the minute. I would imagine that Tom Manley is going to do the exact same thing that his teammate has been doing all session long, and RB, I gotta say, they look in control of this qualifying session. A lot of like how how they were in real life F1. What was it? Yuki Tsunoda in P3, Liam Lawson P6 on the starting grid. It was weird to see the RBs that high up the order. It's not as weird with Tom Manley and Declan Barrett, the double British lineup at the helm. They have been a very strong pairing when Declan Barrett has raced. Of course, Tom Manley, he has taken multiple wins so far this season. You've got to think that RB have some gems on their hand. Tom Manley especially, he has got a very, very bright future in the F1 esports scene.
And has certainly got the skills to pay the bills. He's got that pace, and he's got that sort of defining characteristic that you don't see in a lot of drivers, where they can turn up and they can push and push and practice, and just when you think they haven't got anything left in the tank, they chop off half a tenth. And they really just raise that bar. So that is sort of the characteristic that all of these drivers embody to some extent. But Manley in particular has really put that out on full force.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of these guys coming up from the Xbox platform who raced in the console tiers before heading on to PC, they are present on this grid and present in Q3. Tom Manley, of course, was a champion in Season 12. John Evans is probably one of the longest tenured drivers on the grid. Joris Krozen, he's very new to PC Tier 1, but he has really exploded onto the scene. He sets a 1 minute 8.096 ahead of Will Lewis, but it is Shanika Clay to jump ahead of him. This is where tenure beats youthfulness. But Joris Krozen, watch out for him today. Winning last time out in Austria. I mean, he had a fantastic showing, a brilliant last lap overtake on both Istvan Pukki and Julian Klaffenbach. He ducked underneath them through turn number 4 at Schlossgold. It was poetry in motion, and I think Joris Krozen, he is a rising star in the F1 sim racing scene.
Certainly got a lot of talent on tap there. Sort of seeing them rise up through the tiers and challenge at the very peak of the scene. It has been very exciting to watch, especially when you look at just some of the drivers that they've been running alongside in the Tier 2 space and how they've been able to magically push that pace ever higher and higher in T2. But look at that. Manley has broken into the Twilight Zone, into a 107.944. That is a stunning benchmark that the rest of the drivers are going to have to work very hard to try and follow. Pedreño is the closest with a .010. Barrett, his teammate, is going to be a .044, and a serious competition has just been ignited. The fire has been lit, and the rest of the drivers and their tyres call for aid.
That was a great lap from Tom Manley, the first 1 minute 7 of the session. And look at the top 3 drivers: Tom Manley, Ruben Pedreño, and Declan Barrett. These are all very young, promising talents, and I think some of the veterans of the F1 esport, the F1 sim racing scene, you know, like Jarno Opmeer, Danny Beresnay, Brendan Lee, these established names that we have come to know and love over the years, they're getting older. They're not getting any younger, of course, and they're maybe looking to want to venture into new career paths in the future. I'm not saying anything. I'm not speculating anything. It doesn't actually mean anything. Those are you know, the names that I've just thrown out there. But of course, that is when you get to a point in your career, you've been racing for so long, you want something new. And I think once those guys move on, we've got some very great talents that are ready to take their place. Tom Manley, Pedreño, Barrett, Krozen on this grid as well. John Evans is still quite young. Jake Benham, of course, we touted him to be the next big thing, and now he has really established himself on the grid. Will Lewis, Van Dyken, West, these are all young guys in this Q3 session. That is what I love to see, that these are this is the future of F1 sim racing in Q3 here.
Yep, and not only that, but it's that mix as well. You've got all these fiery personalities and all these different stories coming in from the drivers, the different ways that they've made their way into the F1 sim racing scene, whether that is from console origins, jumping in from another space and sort of finding your home, finding your flow. It's so interesting to see the various ways that the drivers have worked their way through up into where they are now.
Yeah, absolutely. With 3 minutes left to go in this session, we've not really got that many predictions to go through in the live chat. I'm talking to all of you. Please do give us your prediction for pole position. I think I'm the only one. I think, Zappy, I don't know if you gave yours already. I feel like I'm the only one who's actually touted Will Lewis for a pole position. We need Broken Britain in the live chat. I know he always likes to go with Will Lewis. Failing that, Tom Manley, Sappy, which way are you going?
And I said it sort of nearer the start of the session that I was keeping an eye on Pedreño, but really, I was keeping an eye on them and subtly making a bit of a pole prediction there. They've given a strong early performance with a .010, and of course Manley currently stands top of the charts with a .944, but I do think that Pedreño has a little bit more to give here.
Absolutely. We've seen how competitive this qualifying session has been so far, especially in this Banzai phase. When it gets to the point where the pressure is the highest, this is where the gems are really formed. We've got Dylan Ray saying Yoris for pole position, official DJ Mo. If that is a real DJ name, that is a fantastic name that you've got there. He's going with Tom Manley for pole position, and it is very hard to look past Tom. Currently the second to last driver who is about to start his lap. Xander Van Dyken is on his run now. He doesn't seem to be saving any ERS. Jack West is following just behind him. I think Xander is going for his run now.
Xander's going for it, and I think he just wants to get this done at this stage. He knows that it's going to be absolute chaos and pandemonium on the track, and the track evolution isn't going to be really playing much more of a difference beyond this point. We're already seeing drivers get into the .7s, and that's maybe the sort of apex point where the drivers have accepted they're not going to get much more rubber being laid down. So now it's just about getting those runs, getting it done, and seeing where you ultimately come out. It's coming up to the final 60 seconds, and there's not going to really be a chance for the drivers to preserve at this stage and still make it to the line.
Xander's finding a big improvement on his run in the first and second sector, but he needs more if he wants to challenge for pole with less than a minute in this session. This is Xander Van Dyken's last chance to take pole. He'll have to settle for P3 for the time being, as Jack West comes across the line now, slots himself onto the front row of the grid, but not quite enough to triumph over Tom Manley. Will Lewis will be the next one to come across the line. What's it going to be for him? He's not on a push lap at the minute. He's starting a run just now. What about Pedreño improving on his run by almost 1.5 tenths of a second? This could be his challenge for the very top of the order for pole position. Pedreño to the line with a 1 minute 7.819, but it is far from over as Tom Manley is getting his lap underway now. Jake Benham will come out the final corner and complete this lap. What's it going to be for the man in 9th position? 3rd place for now, just 4 thousandths behind Tom Manley on the 3rd row of the grid. Joris Krozen, if he was on a push lap, he didn't improve. If he wasn't, he didn't make it. And you see that front left end plate missing from his car, so something's gone wrong on that lap time, as we'll follow along with Xander. No, Xander's finished his lap, as has Jack West, meaning all eyes have got to be on Will Lewis for the time being. He is up by almost 1.5 tenths down in 10th position. This is not looking like a world beater of a time. It's not looking like pole position for Will Lewis, but he could bring it out of the bag as he'll come across the line. DRS wide open on his Williams car. P4 from him. Great lap ahead of Jack West. What about Declan Barrett in the RB? Currently down in 7th position. Uncharted territory for him. He's much more used to being in the very top of the order. Sets himself just 1 thousandth behind Tom Manley, who is still pushing at the minute and improving as he comes across the line. Can he triumph over Pedreño? No, he cannot. Ruben Pedreño, what a lap time from him there. He puts himself on pole position ahead of Tom Manley. Sappy, you've hit the nail on the head with that prediction there. Tom Manley and Declan Barrett look so dominant as a duo with RB, but neither of them were able to muster pole as Pedreño is in P1.
Well, he certainly got Manley and Barrett flying the team colours in style and quickly. But Pedreño, he pulled it all together at the last moment. That final sector and that second sector in particular, that's really where he nailed it and brought that time out within almost an entire 1/10 of a gap between himself and Manley. I think we are seeing, say, one of the best laps of the season on that board, although I don't want to speak out of turn.
I mean, we've seen very close margins before, but Pedreño, I mean, wide margins before, and I'm pretty sure there has been wider, but Pedreño, around such a short circuit like Zandvoort, where there is very little margin for error, you've got to nail your lap within 1:07. That's like 30 seconds less than Spa-Francorchamps, and so those gaps do tend to be closer together. Well, no, sorry, these times tend to be closer together, to be a whole tenth almost clear of Tom Manley. That's a fantastic lap from him. Barrett and Benham will start on the second row together with Will Lewis and Jack West. In row 3. John Evans and Zanna Van Dyken line up 7th and 8th. Then it was Joris Rosen and Shanika Clay rounding out that top 10. But how about that for Ruben Pedreño? We've got the lobby restart coming up, so we will digest this Q qualifying session in just a minute's time after a quick word from our sponsors at Gridfinder and Next Level Racing. So please don't go anywhere. Welcome back, everyone, to the commentary box where Q3 has just ended. It is Ruben Pedreño taking pole position. Sappy's pulled off the impossible as a commentator, and he's got the prediction completely right. Unbelievable scenes here. Myself and Nathan, week in, week out, we get it wrong. You've come in for your first race of the season, and you've smashed it.
Or what can I say? Okay, I got nothing. It's a lucky break, I guess. But no, he did really sort of show, at least in Q2, that he did have a couple of push laps. I was subtly keeping an eye on him in the background. He had a couple of push laps. They got really good sector times on, but then just yielded out. So by sector 2, sector 3, he was peeling back, looking to head back into the pits. And I just thought, if you have a time where you linked up all those sectors, you get that theoretical best, you're gonna be winning. You're gonna be in the money, and he managed to link it up. And it's very difficult to do that, especially when you've got the pressure of Q3 weighing on your shoulders and knowing what could come of it.
I mean, diamonds are formed under pressure, and that was the highest that it's been, of course, fighting for pole position right at the end of the session. Pedreño knew he needed that lap, and he pulled it out of the bag. A fantastic run from him there, but that is no discredit to Tom Manley and Declan Barrett, who line up second and third on the grid. We really do have to look out for them as RB teammates this season. They've had only few occasions where they've actually got to work together. Declan Barrett has been missing the last couple of rounds. Tom Manley has been sort of flying solo as of recent, and he's been doing very, very well. He's behind Brendan Lee, second in the championship. It's looking unlikely that he'll take the title this evening. But if Tom Manley wins and Brendan Lee finishes lower than 7th, we go into the final race at China.
Yeah, well, difficult but not impossible is always the mantra. And so, yes, the chances are slim for that kind of circumstance. But that doesn't mean it can't happen entirely. And that's part of the racing experience. Things can sometimes just happen, whether it's in your control or not. The measure of you as a racing driver, as well as all that we've talked about at length through qualifying, the ability to pace yourself, to strategize, to manage your sessions as well as your speed. It's knowing how to adapt to those kind of situations, and this is the best of the best that we're talking about here. So seeing that adaptability and that ability to race under pressure as well, I think that's going to be a defining trait to look out for as the situation on track might very rapidly change, suddenly, even if between corners, if not laps.
Absolutely, and I think of course the race is a completely different ball game than qualifying. We are in for an absolute treat. 36 laps of this Netherlands Grand Prix in Zandvoort, of course. What a circuit. It's really old school, only recently coming back onto the calendar. I believe before that the last race was in the late 80s, early 90s around here, and it is a fantastic track. It's really nothing like what we get nowadays in terms of new circuits on the F1 calendar. There's gravel littered around the circuit. It's built in natural terrain. It's built within the sand dunes, I believe. It's right by the sea, so wind can get very crazy around this circuit. But I tell you what, I love a retro circuit like Zandvoort, and I can't wait for the race today, despite it being very difficult to overtake.
It's such a unique set of conditions at Zandvoort as well. Like we talked a little bit about the camber, and obviously that is a very defining trait of the track. But you said it yourself. Say the wind, it's as well can play a factor. If your aero setup is particularly wind and pitch sensitive, then you can experience a lot of unexpected behavior. Of course, you've got the unique loads on the tires as a result of the surface. Combine that with the gravel that's littered around the track. We've seen drivers all catch themselves out and outbrake themselves on and trail onto the banking and onto the course. It does all play into each other to create this unique scenario. And when you're practicing for this track, it's an experience like no other.
Absolutely. It's like a roller coaster, this circuit. I would hate for anyone watching at home if they play iRacing or whatever game that supports motion controls, not motion controls, but these motion rigs. I would feel very bad for you if you're racing around Zandvoort week in, week out, doing lap after lap. I mean, it's such a fun circuit, really. It is properly like a roller coaster. I'd imagine in VR as well. You know, you're dipping all over the place. It's brilliant. And there's very few circuits that are actually like that on the Formula One calendar. In this game, Portimao is very, very fun. Although I don't believe that F1 races there anymore. Unless I'm mistaken, we've not had a Portugal Grand Prix this season, have we?
No. And it's a shame because I really do love Portimao, and I think the altitude change in some areas of the circuit is like Zandvoort's camber. It is one of those defining features of the track that forces you to drive differently because your aerodynamic load, your mechanical grip, it's all going to be in flux all of the time. And in the same way that the camber affects your balance left to right in terms of how much you're pushing the car, the tires, how much you can really quote unquote lean into the corners, it does force you to adapt as a driver.
Absolutely, and it's going to be so fun today. We're going to see lots and lots of action coming up very, very soon. We are now just about to load into the lobby. We've got 10 seconds before the drivers begin to load into the race. We get a peek at what the weather conditions are going to be. It's a mystery, and rain can be a factor around this circuit. It is going to be a very, very dangerous if we do get indeed wet weather conditions. It is so exciting. I know it is sad that, you know, tracks like Portimao were for COVID only. I've just seen other Dave in the live chat talking about it. I don't think we raced at Misano. I think it was Mugello that they raced at during COVID. It was what? Eiffel? No, not Eiffel. The Nürburgring. The smaller Grand Prix circuit. There were some great tracks in 2020. Of course, it was a very late start to the season. But what a year for races that was. I do wish we did have more tracks like that. But Zandvoort, I think, is a very close alternative to all of those circuits. I will bring us now back into the game scene. You can see we're just loading complete, getting ready for this one, and it looks to be nice, sunny, clear conditions here at Zandvoort.
I was almost thinking for a second that you were about to talk about Formula One cars going back on the Nordschleife. I said that would have been quite the experience, and I'm not sure the drivers would be too pleased about that. I'm lucky enough to have gone around the Nordschleife in real life albeit in a rental BMW 1 Series, and throwing it around there. It is so much more vertical than you see represented in a
Wow.
lot of media and a lot of cases. It feels like you are going off a sheer edge at points. Really, you're going 20, 25 degrees, but it feels so much more extreme when you're in that car. Now, granted, it was a rental, and if my rental company is watching this, no, I didn't. But also, say where you do have a conventional car and you're not as low to the ground, so you do feel those arcs and those curvatures of the circuit a lot more.
I mean, a race around the Nordschleife in modern day Formula 1 cars will be about 5 laps long. However, we've got, of course, Zandvoort 36 laps ahead of us as the 5 red lights come on. And we are underway for that Grand Prix as Rune Petrania will lead Tom Manley towards turn number 1, clearing the RB as they take to Tarzan Bocht for the first time here this evening. Everyone getting away very cleanly. No incidents as they head throughout now the tricky first sector. Klaffenbach and Longe, they are on the medium tyres. Watch out for them early as position swaps go on behind. Shanneke Clay, wheel to wheel, banging tyres with Zander Van Dijken. They're side by side, headed through the first sector there. Van Dijken will muscle out Clay there.
Yeah, Klavenbach making a serious gain, 3 positions in that first couple of corners alone, and Presnader taking a bit of a position hit, and that is going to be quite concerning because you do have 2 different stories there. Of course, he's on the hard compound, Presnader is, and he's going to have to fight the best he can to get on that early push to get those hards up to temperature. They're the hardest to keep the temp into, but once they're in there in that operating window, it's going to be a completely different story to Klaffenbach and Longe, who are the only drivers to run an alternate strap with the medium at the start.
Yeah, so Shanneke Clay, he gets back through on Zander Van Dijken, did not take that one lying down whatsoever, and he's got his elbows out early through turn number 11 as they complete the first lap to begin lap number 2. Julian Klaffenbach on a mission. He's up the inside of Joris Krozen, having a half look up the inside of Zander Van Dijken, and his ambition gets the better of him. Joris Krozen will sail back through. Klaffenbach, he's on the quick tyres, but he's got to be careful as he dives it up the inside of his RHE companion in Joris Krozen. Of course, Joris last time out got the better of Julian Klaffenbach, and Klaffenbach knows that these guys, despite being in the same colour, despite being in the same team, through and through, they are rivals, and Julian Klaffenbach gets himself through into P10.
Well, the crux of it is that they are racing drivers. They know that they need to fight, they need to battle, and when it comes down to the track, team affiliations, put it aside, you're racing for position, you are racing for those points, and Klaffenbach knows how to fight with Krozen. He knows how to battle with him. We've seen it time and time again, and he's not going to be afraid to really throw that car in there. The only thing I hope for is that push comes to shove stays a metaphor.
Absolutely, of course. This is not a contact sport. They've got to keep it clean. Otherwise, the stewards will come down on them very heavy. As Julian Klaffenbach will go up the inside of Zander Van Dijken in towards that first corner. And Nicolas Longe looks to follow on through. And this is a smart move, I'd say, from Nico, because he's allowing for Julian Klaffenbach to punch a hole in the air for him, to make these moves on all the drivers ahead of him, and then just follow on through. He's done a fantastic job on these medium tyres, making up the positions, but also keeping life in them. That is going to be crucial for these medium runners of just Julian Klaffenbach and Nicolas Longe. They want to stay out as long as they can, and then be on, get that undercut strategy on all the hard runners in front of them.
Well, Longe trying to play a bit of the long game, as Klaffenbach is going to be, as you said, that spearhead piercing through the rest of the field. They've both made up 7 positions each, so showing that the mediums do have that early gain, but they need to be able to hold it. And Longe allowing Klaffenbach to do the dirty work, do the fighting for him, means that he'll get about an extra lap of life on those mediums, which means that he can either push and get past him in the dying moments of the stint, or be able to take it out a little bit longer and optimize his strategy onto the hard.
Absolutely, as Klaffenbach wants to go for the move on Clay, but I think Clay is hungry for it. On Zander Van Dijken, into turn 1 they go. Klaffenbach very deep on the brakes as Shanneke Clay looks up the inside of Zander Van Dijken through that first corner. But however, those medium tyres will still work in the favour of Julian Klaffenbach through on Shanika Clay. He used the momentum along the outside of the circuit, and now there is a car in between Klaffenbach and Nicolas Longe. Nico is going to look to dispatch Shanika Clay as early as he can. There was no room at the end, down the inside of turn number 7, but Nico is feisty. He's raring to get this move on Shanika Clay, who moves ever so slightly to the inside line through turn number 9 just to defend, but I think Nico around the outside through turn number 10, he will have that move all said and done. Open up the DRS, following the slipstream of Julian Klaffenbach. That was a nice, well-worked move from Nicolas Longe, but that looked hairy at times.
Yeah, well use of the mechanical grip right there from Longe, though, using that compound advantage and putting it into best effect. As soon as Clay got in between the two, I knew that Longe was kind of sweating bullets. He needed to get past that car if his strategy was going to be pulled off. And luckily, he still remained within half a second, so there's still going to be a fighting chance for the strategy. But look behind, as you see a major altercation happening, as that's going to be John Evans completely out of this field. He's going to be into the gravel at turn 1 and completely out of contention for this battle.
There was a little bit of lag there, I think, but Xander Van Dyken, I believe that was... No, sorry, it wasn't Xander Van Dyken. I think it was Jack West. Yes, they've got the same livery. Jack West wanted to defend from Julian Klaffenbach and also go for the move on John Evans, and it just looked like he tapped the back of him. Heading in towards turn at number 1, and then John Evans collided, I'd say, with the rear tyre of Will Lewis in front of him. It's a miracle there's no puncture on that Williams. Of course, I know we've got the full damage. It's not got the simulation specs that we normally do see. But yes, you know, John Evans, very heartbroken, I'd say, with that move there. Klaffenbach forcing Jack West into a mistake. And now there is no wing damage, actually, to Jack West, who's got off relatively scot-free.
Yeah, well, the P7 quali for John Evans is all for naught in the end. Unfortunately, it's not gone his way, and this is going to be giving the opportunity for more drivers to go for optimistic moves. Klaffenbach is going to be firing it down the inside through turn 1 alongside Jack West now, and is going to have to retreat back behind, but he's making the statement known. He's piling on that early pressure, and he is making it very clear he is not afraid to dive and fight and dip in and out to make it his position. He wants that at all costs. He's going for that full, almost Banzai strategy with the faster compound before he runs out of time and he starts to give way, because it's easier to defend the position than it is to attack it.
And there it is, John Evans, he retires in the pit lane. Klaffenbach is up the inside of Jack West through turn number 8, around the outside, sorry, through turn number 9, around the outside, through turn number 10. Jack West not making it easy for him. Nicolas Longe looking to follow through as well, and again, that is another set of corners, another sector where Klaffenbach has to sit behind, and we are approaching that crossover phase between the mediums and and the hards, where it is actually a worry for Julian Klaffenbach and Nicolas Longe. They will not have this pace for very much longer. They've got to make the moves early.
Well, they still have a few more laps of life left in those mediums for sure, but they're not going to be having the major contacts. There is going to be major contact as Klaffenbach goes down the inside. Longe almost looks like he was going to make it 2.5 cars going through that one, and he has in fact managed to get ahead as Klaffenbach made serious contact with the back of West and is now missing an end plate. This is a serious crisis situation for the R8G driver. He's going to be losing time, losing it fast, and he needs to make a serious judgment call before the likes of Clay, Van Dyken, and more cars try to quickly displace him through this second and third sector.
Yeah, this strategy's been ruined for Julian Klaffenbach due to that contact, and something's happened with Nicolas Longe as well. Maybe going for the move on Jack West, then got caught down the inside, and they are parking it in turn number 10. Josh Edo is arriving onto the scene. He's got through on Shanika Clay, who continues to drop down in this race, as now Joris Krozen will look to get through on him. Ismail Fassi arriving onto the scene, and a big rift has been caused throughout the entire train, because now the top 6 has broken away from that Ferrari driver who's lost the DRS at the front of the order. We've not seen too much of them. Tom Manley and Declan Barrett will go through on Ruben Pedreño, and it is an RB 1-2 as it stands.
And thus begins the position trades at the very top. They're going to be quickly displacing each other out through into turn 1, going back and forth and setting themselves up for the stint switch. Now, the main thing on these drivers' minds is not necessarily where they are right now, but it's where they set themselves up for 2, 3, 4, 5 laps down the line potentially, as the racers are going to continue to swap using that DRS and where they're going to make the most of this situation. Curious thing that I wanted to note as we look around this field, Longue for a moment was in the danger zone. At one stage, he was 1.1 seconds away heading into Sector 3. Now, I think he barely got managed to get back within the detection zone and keep it on the back of Jack West, and has now managed to regain full proximity. But that was a serious worry moment for Longue, because to be out of DRS in the position he's in with the strategy he's running, that would have been a nail in the coffin.
Yeah, he's all about the early game so far as Nicolas Longue closes to the back of Jack West. He's taking the fastest lap with him, and there he is down the inside. A very late lunge up the inside of Jack West, maybe weaving a little bit down that straight to let Nico know that he was allowed to go through. Meanwhile, further up the order, Ruben Pedreño continues to fall backwards as Jake Benham will take that final spot on the podium from him. Will Lewis as well. He's closing to the rear. The Williams esports driver fighting it out with the Williams development driver in Ruben Pedreño. They sit 4th and 5th with Nicolas Longue knocking on the door of that top 3.
And Benham is going to assert his dominance into that P3 spot for the time being. Pedreño taking a little bit of a positional hit, but looking behind, you see Longue and Lewis. They're going to be fighting side by side out of the exit of the second sector and into Sector 3. Longue has managed to separate himself from the other medium runner in Klaffenbach, of course, capitalizing on his front wing damage. Knowing that he's not going to be able to keep pace, he took the executive decision to push up ahead. He knows that that previous strategy of staying behind, letting him be the tip of the spear, is no longer going to work when he's running in suboptimal condition. So this is the time he needs to make that push. He already got fastest lap, and now is going to be time for him to make a big send, bit of contact, seriously scaring Benham and Pedreño, but he's going to be fighting for that podium spot, is only going to be able to stay in P4, as Benham has almost signaled to him to give him some space and give him a bit of a chance to breathe. But Longue really going for it here while those mediums still have it in him.
I mean, 10 laps into this race and the mediums are still considerably quicker than the hards. It has been a very strong showing from Nicolas Longue so far. I'll get the deltas back on your screen. I think I misclicked at one point. I clicked D instead of C to get rid of the detail rather than swapping the cameras. But there you can see the tyres on your screen. Everyone on the same set that they've started on, so no one is yet to come into the pit lane, as Nicolas Longue on now 9 lap old tyres, soon to be 10. He has done a stellar job of making his way up the order, up 13 places since the start of the Grand Prix. The medium strategy has been a very huge short-term game, but now I think he's getting to the point where he needs to settle into a rhythm. Pedreño is right behind him on his tail. Tom Manley is going to close to Declan Barrett. They will swap for the lead once again. But indeed, Nicolas Longue, this time by Sappi, he's not close enough to anyone to make a move. And now he's got to think about that rhythm.
Yeah, and now he's got to try and think about where he can settle into this race order. The RBs effectively have those front 2 positions locked down. They're going to continue to trade DRS over the start-finish straight and make sure that both of them retain that top spot. The only major threat is the fact that Benham is closing rapidly and is going to soon close proximity to Barrett to maybe upset that order. But beyond that, if they can continue this consistent trade lap on lap, the only thing that could stand in their way from a total domination of this race is having a minor mess up on the pit window, considering they're both on the hards.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it doesn't really matter in these F1 World Cars as, oh dear, Nicolas Longue barging into the back of Jake Benham, getting impatient for a move. But of course, in the F1 World Car, they've got a random teammate, so chances are Tom Manley and Declan Barrett, if they come into the pit lane, they'll be absolutely fine in the double stack. But there's a very small chance that that does actually come back to haunt them, as Nicolas Longue now closes to the back of Jake Benham, who defends to the inside line in towards turn number 1. Nico is not able to find a move. He's found himself mired in P4 when he believes that he can take more from this race. Pedreño is keeping touch with Nico as well. So this big train stemming throughout the entire order, everyone is in with a second of another car. Even Philip Prejnader down in 17th. You can see in the mini-map there's a decent bit of time between himself and Joni Tormala. He is still within a second of the train. So anything can happen, and anything absolutely will happen.
Yeah, he's still managing to keep that proximity and is fighting for it because he knows if he gets out of that proximity, it's game over. He might as well sign his race away where he stands. But looking at the rest of the field right now, you do make an interesting point about the F1 World Cars, but I wouldn't say it eliminates the risk entirely. They could feel emboldened and go for the double stack, but if everyone goes around the same time, which is not uncommon, let's face it, there is a significant chance that there may be double stacks occurring. Now, because they're ahead, they'll be able to dodge that, but who knows what could happen.
Yeah, I mean, normally when you're racing in the F1 24 cars, you're able to get a notification when your teammate is in the pit lane. You know you're not going to double stack with anyone, but when everyone is coming into the pit lane on the same lap, of course, lots of drivers like to do it differently, but when you're pitting with 5 guys around you, there's a pretty damn strong chance that one of them could be your de facto teammate and you could double stack with them. It's a risk that a lot of these drivers, they're going to have to run. They can't afford to not pit. But of course, we'll see what happens. We're still a little bit away from an actual pit stop coming out, especially for the hard runners. Nicholas Longe and Julian Klaffenbach, their rise up the order has sort of stagnated in recent laps. They'll struggle later on in the race on older hard compounder tyres compared to everyone's fresher mediums, but for now they've done very, very well, and it seems like this is the peak of their performance.
Well, now is going to be about holding that performance together. I see a momentary wobble coming in from Longe, and the RBs continue to trade at the very top. Nobody really going for that major challenge. We do see that Jack West has gone for a bit of an attack on the likes of Klaffenbach and on the likes of Lewis as well, managing to keep it together as he's maybe trying to go for some positions before that pit changeover. And I have to wonder, at what point are they going to be switching onto the mediums? It's fairly safe to say it's going to be a hard to medium strategy, with the exception of Klaffenbach and Longe, who will do the inverse. So are they going to be going for a strategy of going onto the mediums as fast as possible, or are they going to try and maximize their hard stint so they can go for the most, I guess, prime laps on the yellow wall?
Well, only time will tell. We are approaching the pit window for Nicholas Longe and Julian Klaffenbach, who now begin to ever so slightly slip down the order. Nicholas Longe in particular, he has had to look more into his mirrors in the last couple of laps in comparison to looking ahead of him at Jake Benham. Pedreño is looking very racy on the rear of the Frenchman in the Ferrari. Jake Benham as well, just ahead, is closing to the back of Tom Manley. Tarzan Bocht on lap number 15 could be very, very eventful, as Jake Benham will look to the outside of Tom Manley. No, it's Declan Barrett, because of course Tom Manley, he is taking the lead of this Grand Prix. The top 5 all bunch up through turn number 3 and 4. But it seems like no moves aside from the 2 leaders have been made. But Jake Benham, I gotta say, out the top 5, him and Pedreño look to be the quickest.
Yeah, I think it's just right now, Benham, Pedreño, both are just waiting for gaps, waiting for significant chances. And I think Benham's best play is to do as he's doing now. Stay in third. As counterintuitive as it may seem, you might think, well, I want to break up the RB pairing. I want to stop them from position trading. But I think in Benham's mind right now, he's looking at the 2, he's looking at them continue to consistently swap, and he's not going to be able to get a look in without taking some serious risks. So the best he can do is stay behind, keep that pressure high, and eventually coax them into a mistake when his presence is just too much to bear.
Yeah, and some strategy secrets in the live chat being spilled by Jonah Martins, one of the best engineers, of course, in the F1 sim racing scene, working for Ferrari. He states that Nicholas Longe just saving tyres at the minute. However, he could have an opportunity to get through on someone here without using too much of them, because Jake Benham and Tom Manley side by side in the first sector. Jake Benham muscles his way through in turn number 3 and 4, and now Nicholas Longe on the attack around the outside of Tom Manley dishevelled after that move from Jake Benham, and the two RBs have been broken up. Jake Benham and Nicholas Longe pierced through the impenetrable barrier that was Barrett and Manley. The British duo has fallen at the hands of one of their own and a Frenchman named Nico.
I saw a bit of a gap, and say slightly larger gap coming out of the DRS zone, and that was the opportunity that Benham needed. Bide it this time, wait for the ideal window, and then go for it. A little bit rough and tumble, has to be said. There was a bit of contact through turns 2 and heading into turn 3. Manley was just trying to regain his composure, but as it currently stands, it looks like Manley has got some work to do. He's recomposed himself in P4, but he's not going to get that one back without some serious push, and certainly not going to be able to do it without some major overtaking sweeps before the pit window.
Well, it's still a long race left to go. Shanika Clay has decided to come into the pit lane at the end of lap number 16. That is a very early pit stop, considering we still have 20 to go in this race. Those mediums, they should be able to get to the end, given that Nico and Klaffenbach, they've both been on this set since the very start, and now they're on lap number 17. It's soft tyres for Shanika Clay. What is Shanika planning to do here? Again, another race in tatters. It seems like incidents just seem to follow him around this season. It's been so difficult watching Shanika Clay, who on his day can be incredibly quick and competitive. And it's sad to see him down in 19th as Ismail Fassi scraps it out with Joris Krozen. The two kick Salbers of Thomas Ronhart and Brendan Lee, they also fight for position at the minute, but they're at the wrong end of the field. Brendan Lee down in 13th position as here comes Thomas Ronhart back up the inside of Istvan Pukki through turn number 13 and 14. Wheel to wheel between the pair of them. They're fighting it out like it's for first position here.
Well, every position matters, and points or not, you need to be getting that upward momentum, because 15th becomes 14th, 13th, 12th, 11th, say, before you know it, you could be getting yourself into some serious points there. So the big thing right now is they need to establish a good foothold in the field before they get to that pit transition, and at the front of the field is going to keep themselves very occupied. So having a clean race, slowly moving your way up the positions could be opportunistic, but if it gets them into an ideal position for when the leaders eventually outbreak themselves, push themselves too far in the pursuit of position, then that's where you want to be. We see that fight continue as Josh Ito is going to be under some serious pressure from Brendan Lee. They're going to be side by side, heading out to the edge of the second sector, down through into turn 10 and 11 here. It's going to be a brief settling of position, but doesn't look like Brendan Lee is quite done. Because remember, a good finish could be a championship wrapper, and even just a few decent points could be enough to seal any kind of points heading into the final round.
He doesn't even need to finish, honestly, inside the top 10. He doesn't need to finish the race at all, as Xander Van Dyken and Jack West come into Istvan Pukki. All three of them.
They've all done it.
They've all sped. What have they done? Istvan Pukki, Jack West, and Xander Van Dyken, all three of them in tandem, coming into the pit lane and speed. What the hell has just happened there? All three of them with a 10-second time penalty to their name for speeding in the pit lane. Is there something wrong with this circuit? Is there something tricky about that pit lane entry? It is, of course, right off the circuit. You basically just have to do a right. But all three of them getting a penalty? That is really unseen.
Well, the thing is, you know for a fact that it's only going to be a couple of kilometers over, but it's still over. And the drivers are going to push for every hundredth, every millisecond. And if that means taking a bit of risk into the pit lane, they're going to go for it. I mean, you saw the margins that we were seeing in qualifying, and they're going to take that attitude to the entire race effort. Unfortunately, Van Dyken, West, and Pukki all taking it a little bit too far there and just outbraking themselves, likely locking up, and that would have been the death knell. But you see, Pedreño is going to be another one to take that hit. That's going to be 4 cars now taking that compromise, and you can see as well how they're spacing out their pit stops, which I was not expecting. I was expecting a heavy stack around this point, but it looks like many more are going to be taking those hards a little bit longer. Klappenbach and Longe still remain on the mediums. Are they going for a maximizing medium strat, or just trying to hold track position before those yellow walls give way?
I mean, that's what they've got to do. They've got to integrate themselves into the hard train as much as they can. They don't want too much of an undercut, of course, because then their tires will just be completely cooked when it comes to actually fighting those fresh mediums. But of course, the hard tires that will be on Nicholas Longe and Julian Klaffenbach's cars very, very soon, they are going to be able to go to the end. They want to be as close to their rivals as they can, because of course, once those medium tires at the end of the race, they fall off, that is when Nico and Julian, they're actually going to phase back into the race, and they're going to potentially be a lot quicker than all of the medium runners as more pit stops begin to come out. Jake Benham and Tom Manley into the pit lane. Thankfully, neither of them got a penalty. I know that Will Lewis and Joris Kroosland, they pitted last time by, and there was no penalties to their name. But that is tragic, I gotta say, for Ruben, because I think Nathan, I almost called you Nathan there, Sappy. Ruben was in a real position where he could have contended for the win of this Grand Prix. He was in P4, he was on pole position to start this one out, and now he runs in a net race lead position with a 10-second time penalty to his name.
Well, Freudian slip aside, I'm inclined to agree with you, because he really did have that on lock until that moment. He did have a prime position to be able to fight and to bring his A game into the second half of the race. The thing that has surprised me more, though, is I look at the two medium runners. I look at Longe and I look at Klaffenbach. Klaffenbach has got an end plate missing this entire time. Wow. And yet he still managed to keep this level of pace. That is a seriously impressive achievement. And while he's out of the DRS now, I think that's going to be a signal to take it in. As for the medium runners, for the two, the trade-off is going to be slightly different. I think the compromise is going to be at what point is the loss of pace on mediums going to be worth going in, rather than sort of trying to integrate into the train per se.
And Klaffenbach has still stayed out, as has Nicholas Longe. He is now going to get swallowed up by the pack because Ismail Fassi's just blasted on by, and then Josh Ito has also gone through. And I'd imagine that Brendan Lee, he'll be ahead of Julian very, very soon. You can see Brendan is all over the back of his R8G companion, but it's just not going to be enough for the time being. Klaffenbach will struggle massively in this first sector to keep pace with Josh Ito already dropping 0.3 of a second to the back of the Red Bull. I don't even know what car it is. It's sort of a Red Bull looking livery, but it's not quite. It's very similar, but yes, it's just that slight bit different as Brendan Lee can't find the move into the braking zone. This is really detrimental to his race, especially now with another contender for the win in Ruben Pedreño being essentially eliminated. It gives Tom Manley that extra shot at winning, which is what he needs to do to take the title, to take the fight to China next time out. If Tom Manley finishes second position, it does not matter where Brendan Lee is. Tom Manley will lose the championship. He's got to win today.
He's got to make it count, and it's got to be a lot of pressure on his shoulders, no doubt about that. I know Josh Ito, I believe, is running the Alpine livery.
Oh, okay.
That's a special edition Alpine livery. And I had the thought in the back of my mind, but I was wondering if it actually commit to it. Klaffenbach has jumped onto the soft tyres. So he's gone from a medium soft. That would explain the extremely long medium stint and integrating with the hard runners as much as they can. And Longe is going to do the similar thing. I think as that medium soft is going to have some serious potential to really run this race once they get into their stride and once they manage to get those softs into that operating window. The only thing I worry about now is that Klaffenbach still does not have his end plate replaced. It's still missing.
Yeah, and that is going to be very detrimental to the end of his race, especially in that first sector. Surely all of these the one medium runner and the hard runners behind, they've got to think about coming to the pit soon. But Nicholas Longe will stay out for another lap here. Ismail Fassi, no one in the top 7 is coming into the pit lane at the end of lap number 23. Lap 24, surely those mediums are completely dead. And seeing them go this long into the race, 13 laps on a set of these softs seems very, very feasible. And so
you can also look you can also look at the fact that he's a second and a half away from Fassi, because now he can almost manipulate the conditions of the race where he's not in that DRS fight. The drivers can continue to fight with one another for position, and that would give him a bit of extra breathing room on those mediums. The more laps that he can munch on the mediums, the better those softs will be in their prime, and the more he can really leverage that maximum grip. So if he can keep equal time with the drivers chasing him and still chew down the miles, then he's going to be in a very good spot for this second stint.
Well, that tyre saving that he did earlier on, where he really held himself back, he restrained himself from going for the moves on his rivals, he will reap the rewards late on in this race, and thankfully he does not get a speeding penalty. I can't say the same about Ismail Fassi. Another 10-second time penalty added onto a driver's time this race. That is the 5th that we have seen of the evening. 2 Spanish drivers to do it as well. Very, very sad to see, as Jake Benham will go through on Will Lewis, and Will Lewis will go through on Ruben Pedreño. So there's a big melee headed down in towards the first sector. Look at Joris Krozen around the outside of Xander Van Dyken. Tom Manley and Declan Barrett looking to get involved as well, as Joris cannot find the move on Xander, and you'll have to look behind him because Tom Manley on 1 lap fresh and medium tyres will be all over the back of the winner of the Austrian Grand Prix. Both of these guys race winners so far this season. They've had great amounts of success and they've taken strides forward, and I think both of them have got to be very proud about their season 18. But of course, Sappi, it's not over yet.
It's far from over. We've still got plenty of racing left to do. Plenty of stories left to be decided. And currently standing at the front of the net race, not considering Lee and Ronhart still out on that course, Benham is going to be leading the queue and is going to be doing so in quite a strong and convincing fashion. Lee and Ronhart finally coming into the pits now, being our last runners to jump into the paddock for a fresh set of tyres. What are they going to be jumping onto? I wouldn't be surprised. And yes, they are going for the red walls, but are they going to be getting out in time? Are they going to be getting out in a good position relative to the field? Pedreño and West are going to trade heading through turns 2 and 3. Pedreño is going to be getting that 3rd place spot and holding it as best as they can, as they are going to be cruising their way through. And now the field fully reconvened. This is what it looks like in full now that all the pit stops are completed.
And now Nicolas Longuet, he leads the soft runners. He's got through on Julian Klaffenbach, who with the 2-lap undercut was able to overtake the Ferrari driver despite being behind before the pit stop. And the delta is 3 seconds to Declan Barrett. But already just in 2 corners, Nicolas Longuet has taken 5/10 off the RB's time there. So Nico is flying at the minute. He's in a fantastic position to take the challenge to the top 8 very, very soon, as Ismail Fassi is through on his Van Pookie, both of them with a 10-second time penalty to their name. I don't believe how much quicker Nicolas Longuet is. He has just taken out a second of Declan Barrett's time within 2 sectors.
And for looking at the soft runners in particular, Longuet going for that fastest lap and getting it. This is where he's been restraining himself up to this point, and a chance for him to see really what kind of pace he has on tap. He hasn't got the DRS to help him out here, so this is going to be pure aggression, pure drive, pure pace, and he's going to have to really break those tenths down. He's already done a great job, already within 2 seconds and counting, and the rest of the field is going to be lying in wait as everyone has pretty much hit a point of equilibrium. Lewis and Benham are going to be going for positional trades, but right now eyes are on the splits between Barrett and Longuet as the softs and the medium strategies intercollide.
Absolutely, as Nicolas Longuet, he is unchained. The hound has been unleashed on the top 8. He's closing and closing with every passing corner, driving through the gravel down at turn number 12. I think maybe just pull yourself back a little bit more. He's losing a little bit of time by doing that, but he's almost within the DRS range of Declan Barrett. He is doing a fantastic job, is Nicolas Longuet. Meanwhile, Will Lewis will lose the lead of this Grand Prix to Jake Benham and Ruben Pedreño. Ismail Fassi now with the fastest lap of the race. The soft runners continuing to improve on their pace in closing to the back of the medium runners. Will Lewis, what can he do? He has not got a time penalty to his name, as has Jake Benham, Joris Krozen, Tom Manley, Declan Barrett. These are the guys we've got to watch out for, as Tom Manley, he is trying for the move on Joris Krozen through turn number 7, down the inside for the championship contender, and Declan Barrett will try and follow him on through. This is playing into the hands of Nicolas Longuet, who now, Sappi, has 1 second. He's got half a second to the cars in front of him, and he's well and truly within the DRS train.
He spent the entire race telling himself to cool his jets, and now it's time to really release that pressure, release that tension, and go for it with full force. 110% drive from Longuet. He's already within a couple of tenths as Crozen has lost some serious time battling with Manley and Barrett. They had a little bit of tyre bumping coming through that second sector, and now that has played right into the soft runners' hands. They're within that contention. They're within that proximity, and now it's time to see those soft runners and the real pace they have on tap. He's going to peak it down the inside, front axle next to rear, down through turn 1, into turns 2 and 3. They're going to bump the tires a little bit. They're going to squeeze each other for all of the space that they've got through the banking. It's going to be almost 20 degrees of camber, but it's almost going to be 110% from Longuet, as that is the first overtake on the medium, and it's going to be the first of many if he wants to make this stint count.
Poetry in motion for Nicholas Longuet there. He saw the tiniest gap in turn number 1 and he jumped through it with perfection. Then got his car alongside the kick Sauber of Joris Crozen, hung it around the outside through turn number 3, using the momentum of the banking and the outside line to his advantage. Brilliant stuff from Nicholas Longuet. I do not care if he's got 5 lap pressure soft against medium tyres. That is a move that you only see from the very, very best. And I don't think he's done there, because Nicholas Longuet, his next victim, Declan Barrett, headed down in towards turn number 1. DRS wide open. We'll check back in on the leaders as Jake Benham moves into the lead of this Grand Prix. Let's have another look at Nicholas Longuet trying to go around the outside this time. What has happened? Tom Manley! Tom Manley's made contact with Sander Van Dyken. Oh my word, something's gone wrong there. Tom Manley sent the wrong way, down in 15th position. He has got no chance of winning this race now. And with that, Brendan Lee in 11th position. He doesn't need to score any points at all today, Sappy. He is going to win this championship.
That is what we said earlier about the race going in any kind of direction. You never know what is going to happen, and we just saw one of those freak events happen in real time. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, Manley and Van Dyken make that contact. There's a bit of a knock-on effect on the rest of the field, but for the championship, it's all but sealed. So now the real race is on to get to the end of this race, to make it home and to seal the title, as well as seal the stories for many other drivers that continue to push through. Longuet in 6th, continuing the crusade of the Red Wall, and now Barrett is going to be the next target. Considering his teammate is no longer there to back him up, he's going to have to fight a lot harder.
Oh, Nicholas Longuet biding his time because Declan Barrett's gone deep on the brakes. And there it is, another crafty move up the inside for Nicholas Longuet. See it on the switchback. The safety car's out. Excuse me?
Josh Ito went
Ito
into the pit wall.
The safety car's out. Josh Ito makes a critical error. I thought he just retired in the pit lane, truth be told. I mean, that has just turned the race on its head. What has happened there? Shanika Clay into the pit lane for a fresh set of soft tyres. I wonder what will happen here. Now that the safety car is out, I believe there's a mandatory 2 laps of racing that is required at the end. So we might, So I think, lap number 34, the safety car is guaranteed to come in. This is unprecedented.
I was not expecting this, I have to be honest. I really was not expecting anything like it. So what happened? Josh Ito turned too late into the pit lane and made contact on the outside edge of the pit wall instead of making it in. So I have no idea what to make of that situation. I really wasn't able to capture it. I was not expecting it one bit. I just saw the car crashed into the outer edge of the pit wall about 5-10 meters away from the actual wall and the entrance. So now we're going to see the safety car have a major effect, a major change up, as Jack West is going to get 10 seconds on to his time. That is another speeding pit lane penalty. The drivers really are taking their race into their own hands with how much they are pushing to even take tenths in the pit lane. Is it worth it, considering the amount of risk to run it that close? Of course, when you're operating at this level, the answer is yes, but it seems like more drivers than not are misjudging this one.
What is absolutely hilarious, unless you're a Jack West fan, is that is the second time he's done that today. He's been able to serve the first penalty, but you can see with the penalties on your screen now, he's still got 10 seconds to be added to his race time. What has he done? Jack West, you utter utter fool. I mean, this is very exciting now because we've essentially got 3 different strategies in effect. We've got the medium runners who decided to stay out on circuit in Will Lewis, Jake Benham, Rumpedreño and Declan Barrett. Then you've got the soft runners who pitted earlier on, Nicolas Longuet, Ismael Fassi and D'Hortensio. They have decided to stay out on that exact set. And then you've got the rest of the grid downwards who have all pitted for a set of the fresh, soft compound of tyres. Joris Krozen, Joni Tormala and critically, Brendan Lee. They are the leading 3, and I wonder how far can they see themselves up the grid once the safety car comes back into the pit lane. I would imagine next time by Sappy.
Or it boils down to a simple question. On the surface, very easy to answer, but when you really think about the nuances of it, it gets a lot more complicated. How much is your track position worth? If you're in the set of P1 to P4, then you are looking at that track position being everything. You can defend with those mediums at least for a lap. 2 laps might be stretching it, considering everyone will be in prime condition, minimal wear, and is not going to be having any major issue with really taking the fight to the rest of the field. For the ones who are staying on those old softs, they're taking a bit of a gamble. They still have the soft in their pocket, but they're not going to have the prime pace that the likes of the fresh soft runners are going to be going for. So we're seeing those 3 different schools of thought. The defensive strategy, the push where I can, and the 110% drive in those final 2 laps with the fully fresh softs in their prime, warmed up. Notice how the top 4 are doing the bare minimum to keep those mediums in the operating window. They don't want to wear them any more than they have to.
Yeah, and they're not by any means at the end of their life. They're only 13, 12, 11 laps old for all of these guys. We saw Nicolas Longuet run 24 laps on this set of the tyres, so it's possible definitely for them to get to the end, but they are saving everything that they can. We've seen Jack West come into the pit lane at the end of the last lap. He's retired from this race, but I think what happened is that he wanted to serve that 10-second time penalty and then catch up to the rest of the grid, and then essentially he's not got any problems there as the safety car is in this lap. Jack West, he got himself a drive-through penalty for overtaking under safety car conditions. And he just decided to call it there because he actually stopped to come into the pit lane. He decided he was going to take it perfect this time by, but nevertheless he is out of this race. Will Lewis, it is his discretion. He controls the start and he's going to pull the trigger now. The race is back on with 3 laps to go. What can happen? What will happen in the final laps here? As already Jake Benham will go to the outside line. Nicolas Longuet as well looking to attack Declan Barrett as they head through Tarzan Block for the 34th time of the evening. Your eyes do not deceive you. There is no more safety car out on circuit. We are within racing conditions here and Nicolas Longuet gets himself into P4.
I was about to say keep an eye on Barrett as he technically has the youngest mediums of the group, but it looks like he's under that immediate pressure from Longuet as he's using that soft advantage, that leverage. But saying that, Pedreño is going to be dropped down to 4th. Barrett's going to get up to 3rd and now 2nd, and he's gone for a major move against Will Lewis. It's pandemonium at the top 5 of the field as Longuet is going to go for the upward push. Fassi is going to be also there making a serious challenge to Will Lewis around the outside, and chaos is unfolding rapidly.
So kind of a NASCAR race as they head through the this straight in towards turn at number 11. We are watching Brendan Lee, champion-elect today, make some overtakes. He's now into 7th position, just behind Joni Tormala. Joris Krozen, he actually saw himself into P5 for a brief moment, and now he's got himself a 3-second time penalty. Thomas Ronhaar, he's involved in the fray. Rumpedreño, he's backing off. Everyone is going through as now the DRS has been enabled. If things couldn't get crazier, we have allowed these drivers to overtake using the DRS. I mean, this is going to be even more chaotic than what we have seen before as Nicolas Longuet, he is around the outside of Declan Barrett, headed through turn number 3. Joni Tormala, he could win this race on 3-lap-old soft compounder tyres. Come on, lads! With 1.5 laps left to go, Nicolas Longuet through on Declan Barrett.
Yeah, they were fighting all the way out of turn 3 and giving it their all there as Longue, Barrett, both side by side for a significant portion. For a second there, it looked like Longue was boxed in. Tormula is going to be going for the send, however, almost 3 wide for a split second as you make your way through, out and into the end of the second sector now. Tormula is going to be one of the fresh soft runners and is going to be the only major threat to these top runners right now, as Declan Barrett has already been displaced to 6th place. The softs are taking over. It's going to be a sea of red wall tires as they're now making their way through. Barrett's been left out to dry. Lewis is also down in P11. So all eyes on Longue, Tormula and Benham, the top 3, all on various strategies, all converging together in the same place. It's the final lap. It's a send for Yoni. It's going to be around the outside of turn 1, and it's going to be tooth and nail heading into the rest of the lap.
Wow, Jake Benham somehow, some way, keeps that position ahead of Yoni Tormula. Nicholas Longue, this is his opportunity to run away with the race win on the final lap of the Grand Prix. Brendan Lee, he's getting involved. He's going for gold, trying to take the final spot on the podium away from the father himself, Yoni Tormula. As in towards turn number 8 and 9 they go. Brendan Lee around the outside, your championship leader, his main rival down in 8 and out of contention. Brendan Lee does not care in the slightest. Around the outside now of Jake Benham, Nicholas Longue with no more contenders to him in this race. He will win it here today, but Brendan Lee down the inside still as they head into the final sector for the final time. Yoni Tormula ducks beneath Jake Benham. They're 3 wide heading in towards turn number 13. This can only end badly as Brendan Lee somehow gets that position, but we have a look at Nicholas Longue. He will take the win ahead of Brendan Lee, who with this P2 will take the championship with him. What a race, what a way to go out. Thomas Ronner finds himself in P4 out of absolutely nowhere. Jake Benham survives the onslaught from all of the soft runners. He will remain on the podium. What a race that was.
It's chaos right to the very end. 3 wide, 4 wide at stages. You can't write this. You can't make it up. I could take it to the West End. I could take it to Hollywood, and they say you're out of your mind. But apparently, it happens here in PC Tier 1. We saw it come to the very edge, and we saw battles go for the very, very hundreds and milliseconds up to the line. I do feel bad for Yoni. He lost an end plate in all of that commotion, and that's what dropped him down to the P5 that we saw him in. He could very easily have taken the podium spot at the very least. It didn't go his way tonight, but he fought hard and he fought to the very end, which is certainly a statement to his character of being one of the strongest on that field and really knows how to push.
And a little fact from George Morgan in the live chat: first league racing title for Brendan Lee since AOR back in 2017. It has been 7 years since Brendan Lee has won a championship in league racing. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Nicholas Longue, he will celebrate atop the podium, the winner of the Dutch Grand Prix. But what a race that was, honestly. And hats off to all of those guys who kept it clean in the final laps. I gotta say, I'm very upset, though, for Yoni Tormula. There was a part of me, I think it came out at one point, honestly. That was such a haze. I think there was a part of me that shouted, "Come on, Yoni," or something like that. I wanted to see Yoni Tormula at least on the podium. But incredible stuff. Incredible scenes as we await the results. For some reason, they're not appearing on our screen, but we know that Nicholas Longue, Sappy, is your race winner. And I don't think they're going to let me look at the results. Did they come up on your screen?
Very, very briefly. I had about 10 seconds to try my best to memorize them all. So that is going to be Longue taking the win with Brendan Lee, of course, alongside. And I mean, you like I said earlier, you can't write this. It was very entertaining to hear you yell, "Come on, lads," as we came through and over the crest in through to turn 5 and 6. But that was seriously a race where the energy from everyone was 110%. You could tell how much everyone was fighting, how much they wanted those positions, wanted the podium, wanted the win, and how really they were just giving it their all. And that's all we can ever ask for in a race. And what an electrifying ending.
I was honestly just excited. I think I mean, that was so fun in the last couple of laps. It got quite dicey at some points. There was a bits of contact. Of course, we don't like to see that, but we also do love to see fantastic racing. And I'll tell you what, it has been a fantastic season. It's been fun from start to finish. We still got one more round left to go next time out in China. But for now, the championship has been decided, and I can bring this up on your screen. Brendan Lee is your champion. We haven't got a 16:9 one, unfortunately, but this will do. This is the Twitter graphics, so this is what you will see. But there it is. WOR Season 18 champion, Brendan Lee. Revel in it. This is vintage stuff. Brendan Lee, the first ever F1 Esports champion, the first double F1 Esports champion, returns to his throne after 6 years of trying to claw back as new stars have risen into the scene. Jarno Opmeer took his championship from him. David Tinitzer as well. Lucas Blakely. One of his longest rivals, Freddie Rasmussen, has won a championship in F1 sim racing. And Brendan Lee, he is not done yet. He's not a young man anymore, but he has still got that fight in him, and he's taken the championship amazingly this season. I'll read out some of the statistics that he has had. 8 podiums in 11 races for Brendan Lee. Those include 2 wins so far in Silverstone, his home Grand Prix, and Mexico. He's been off the podium for the last couple of races. Round number 8 at Belgium was his most recent positional, P2 that was. He didn't win that race, but he got second place. What a season for Brendan Lee.
And that is just a testament to the fact that even if you've been around the scene for a very long time, even if you've had a lot of exposure to it, and to say maybe times have changed, the game has changed in very significant ways, you can adapt, you can still drive forward, you can still be the best of the best. Longate has proved that, as well as Lee. And they both have been sort of drivers who've been around, but Brendan Lee in particular, of course, you read off some of the historical statistics themselves, but it really just solidifies that fact. Say Brendan has been, at this point, part of the furniture of the scene. You can't really go anywhere and say not see him referenced in some manner. So for him to come back and really show that even after all this time, he's got this amazing form, he still can fight it up there with the best of them, I think it's only fair we have a chat to him.
Buonasera.
Absolutely. Buonasera from Nicholas Longay as well, joining our interview room. I think we'll leave the champion himself, we can call him that again, for last. But let's talk to Nicholas Longay first. Nico, how are you today, first and foremost?
Very good, thank you. How about you guys?
Oh, after watching that one, fantastic. That was so fun in the last couple of laps. But once again, you decided to not qualify here this evening. You started from the back of the grid. I think it was 18th position that you began this race in. Once again, I want to ask everyone who's able to come up through the order and finish on the podium, what's the thinking behind that?
Not much, to be honest. I think that's how it works. Because as we all know in this game, the hard-medium strategy is always the most dominant one and the most safe one as well. And starting from such a far back position, there's nothing you can really do but to take like a big risk. I didn't know if I was gonna pit onto the hard or onto the soft. I just kind of decided to try the medium and see where it took me. And then I saw that even by lap like 15, 20-ish, I saw that the mediums were still in a relatively good state. So I was like, okay, then I think I'm gonna go long and then put the softs on and see what happens. And thanks to the safety car, I managed to get the last positions in the end.
And I want to ask about the safety car, of course, because lots of drivers who were within your midst at that point, like Joris Krozen, Joni Tormler, I think, was one of them as well, and Brendan Lee as well, they decided to come into the pit lane for a fresh set of the soft compound tyres. But yourself, you stayed out on that 7-lap old set. What was your thinking behind that?
To be honest, I think what I was thinking about was I was hoping that some people in front would pit and have some people behind me follow me through, because I knew I had some people behind me on the soft, like about similar tire age, that maybe would try and stay out and risk. So I thought I was going to have a little bit of a cushion between me and the first new soft runners that were going to be in the train. But there was only 2 people, I think, behind me that didn't pit, and it was still enough, clearly, because those 2 people managed to keep the new soft runners banned for just enough time for me to get past the people in front. So I think it was the correct decision on my perspective.
Yeah, and it worked out perfectly. You've taken your first win of the season, your second podium. You've not been on the podium since round number 1. Of course, we've only seen you a few times so far this season. I think, Mexico you did, Belgium, and USA, I think. So only 5 races for you so far this season. But are these late podiums in season 18, do they give you confidence heading in towards F1 sim racing very, very soon?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, any good result always gives you confidence, and it's always good to have in the back of your head knowing that you've done it before, so you can do it again. It's always a very big confidence boost that you need in a championship like this.
Well, and we've got one more race left in the season. China is the final round. Are we going to be seeing you for that?
I think so, yes.
That's what we like to hear. Thank you very much, Nicholas Longe, for joining us in the interview room. We will let you get off and enjoy that win, but thank you very much. Sorry, actually, Sappy, is there anything you want to say to our race winner?
Honestly, you sort of took the words right out of my mouth. You sort of answered a lot of the major questions. I guess all I'd really ask is, just looking back at the season thus far, how have you found it? Have you had any particular, say, highlight moments that really stuck out for you this season?
I mean, it's got to be tonight, I guess. I mean, I haven't done many
Fair
races.
enough.
I haven't done as many races as I would have liked to. But I think I took a different approach on my preparation for this year, and I'm just way more experimenting every race, just kind of learning more than really focusing on pure pace, which I know will come. It's not there yet. That's why I'm not really doing qualifying. So I'm just kind of preparing in a sort of different manner than I did last year.
Well, better to take a risk and see if it works out than not. And
yeah,
not.
I mean, if you're gonna take a risk,
tonight.
it's better to take it now than to take it in the F1 Sim Racing Championship. So, yeah.
Amen to that. Well, you did amazingly out there tonight, and that risk clearly worked in your favour.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you very much to Nicholas Longe. We will move on to our champion, Brendan Lee. How does it feel to be called that again?
Yeah, it's been a little while. Yeah, it just feels good, to be honest. Of course, we're pushing to come back from basically not winning any races for a very long time. And now to be back in a much better stride is just a very nice feeling.
Yeah, I mean, what a return to form that we have seen heading on to F1 24. I mean, what was F1 2017 and 18 that you won your championships? I was 14 and 15 years old at that time. I'm 21 next week, Brendan, and you were winning championships when I was in my mid-teens. I might make you feel a little bit old in saying that, but we are seeing this incredible return to form on F1 24. Is this the most confident you felt since those 2 championship runs?
I don't really think about that, to be honest. I think about execution and actually just performing on the spot. I don't really think about, let's say, carrying confidence, because that's easily popped. But I think about doing consistent foundations of good work to build up a good feeling inside of myself. And to answer that part of the question, yes, I feel really at ease in my life. I feel really at peace with myself. Put to bed a lot of, let's say, negatives from the last few years. Personal life and racing. And I really feel good to go and give my best.
Well, I mean, your best is absolutely enough. What a season you have had. There's another podium added to your list. We were talking about it. 2 wins so far this season. We've still got 1 race left to go in China, and now 8 podiums to your count. In terms of league racing seasons, do you feel this is the most dominant you've ever been?
No. I think if we look at, let's say, a percentage or whatever, I remember doing AOR back F1 2017. I think I won like 10 or 11 races in a row. But, you know, it's a different time, a different era, different people, different standards. So I don't like to compare back to then and now. I'm growing. I'm understanding where to be strong in this current era of F1 sim racing and league racing, etc. Because the style that was effective back then is just simply not effective now. And it requires a really dynamic and fluid approach to driving to be at such a high level against just such amazing drivers, you know. So it's more about being in the moment rather than thinking, oh, because I did this in 2017. Of course, to extend on from that podcast answer, there's stuff that I carry through as a core DNA of what I like or don't like in my driving and my personality as well. But you have to evolve, and that's what I feel I did a big step with in this year's game iteration.
Yeah, well, evolve you have, and now that you've conquered WOR PC Tier 1, F1 Sim Racing is next. What are your goals for the upcoming season?
Win the championship, both drivers and teams.
Oh, that is what we love to hear. And you know what? This has been your best chance yet since 2017 and 2018, when that young, scrappy lad was fighting it in the Mercedes. Doing the little finger wag to Fabrizio Donoso in Abu Dhabi. You've grown a lot since then, and I think this is the year that Brendan Lee makes his comeback, and especially with a teammate like Thomas Ronhaar. I mean, as a duo, do you feel that you were the best team on the grid?
I don't like to use the word best. I really believe in our characteristics and who we are and the foundations that we bring, but it would just be arrogant and, to be honest, quite stupid to sit there and go, oh, we're the best or not the best, whatever. But quite simply, I think the attitude that wins is quite simply by believing you're not the best, but having the foundations to be the best. And that keeps driving forward rather than being arrogant and assuming what worked previously will work again. And to be honest, working alongside Thomas and the engineers behind the scene and the whole foundation that we have, not just the drivers and not just the engineers we sit with, but everyone that goes on behind the scenes to provide even the details of the PC and the monitors and the wheelbases and everyone that's involved, they're equally as important as the two drivers that go on the broadcast, you know? So also the credit goes to them. But in another way, Thomas is a great person to practice with because, you know, he's getting the maximum out the setup, even if it's annoying that he always goes 2/10 quicker on his first lap.
I mean, Thomas, he's always... I feel like every week he's posting a world record lap or something. So, yeah, you're absolutely right in that regard. Sappy, is there anything you want to say to our Season 18 champion?
Oh, I mean, first off, congratulations. It goes without saying at this point, but an immense performance tonight and an immense performance over the season. And just from that little conversation, it sounds like a Brendan Lee revitalized, to say a amazing pace being tempered by that experience and really finding that form. A curiosity of mine is where you talked about that sort of evolution and that ability to adapt and work towards, say, where there was a different era back then in the 2017-18 era, and now fundamentally it's a different game. The game has changed, and so have you. So my question really to you is, did you find any significant challenges on that path to where you are now, sort of standing back atop the podiums once again?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is, and the challenge I faced and the biggest challenge that I feel I've overcame now to get back into this good stride, is remembering the style that I want to do with setting up my car, my steering settings. For example, the meta really has been, in the last few years, even since 2019, to be running super low on the wheel rotation. I've gone against that now, and that's even what I did in 2018, and running a very high steering rotation. And that's just my driving style, to be honest, and to have a lot more flexibility to work with the trail braking. So that's the biggest challenge and the biggest life lesson I've learned, is even if it's not better for 19 other people, it probably still is better for you. And that's also an advice I'd pass on to people in whatever area of life, but let's say specifically racing, is if you feel comfortable with something, that's more than likely going to bring you a better result, better success, than just following everyone else's stride.
Yeah, and in a way, you say you breaking out into your own once again, daring to do things differently, is what's brought you right back up to the top once again. So very insightful answer there. And I won't don't make it go too much longer in terms of questions, but I wanted to round it off by saying that it has been an absolute pleasure watching you tonight. And while I only have this experience for one race of the season, just this discussion alone and how you performed on track is indicative of the talent at play.
Thank you. Well, seeing as it was your one and only race and I won the championship, I'm personally inviting you with very stern certainty to every F1 esports race. So yeah, I'll see you on the flight.
I'll take it.
Oh,
But cheers, buddy.
wow! Thank you, Brendan Lee, for joining us. Is there? I mean, we've made this a longer interview, of course, because you're the champion. One last thing: is there anything you want to say to your adoring fans in our live chat, and indeed your own?
I was if I would say adoring. That's a very nice word. But I think the biggest word and the biggest thing I want to say is thank you for the people that supported me with a true heart, you know, and even through the bad season, still there, posting a nice comment, posting a nice message. I often read them all, so I really enjoy to see that, and it always gives me a nice little boost to keep on elevating my game. And I want to say also a big thank you to the people who doubted me and continue to doubt me, as when I see those messages, it fires me up even more to go prove people wrong.
Wow, incredible stuff. Brendan Lee, we'll let you get away and enjoy your championship. Thank you for joining us.
Mackies it is. Lovely jubbly. Right, see you later.
What a way to celebrate. Nice McDonald. Is he still here, Brendan? Is he still here? I want to know what his order. Oh, he's gone. That is so tragic. I wanted to know what he'd order. But yeah, I mean, what more can we say about Brendan Lee? What an interview that was. I feel like he always gives us the absolute best answers out of anyone on the grid. And at the 89 people that are still watching in the live chat, don't go telling any other driver that I said that. But every time we get to talk to Brendan Lee, something new comes up, and it just builds on his character. And this time it was about the evolution that he's had in his recent years. He's getting on in his F1 esports career. He's been here since the very beginning. He was, of course, the original champion back in F1 2017 in the very first season in Abu Dhabi with his finger wag on Fabrizio Donoso in that final race. But he's still growing. He's still changing as a person, and it is fantastic to see.
Every driver has a story, and Brendan's no different. His story has been a bit longer and has a bit more chapters than some of the other talent we see on this field, but everyone has that journey to how we got here. It's like we were talking about briefly in qualifying, and to say the more you learn about not only what they took to get here, but how they continue to strive to stay here in such a competitive era of F1 sim racing and such a competitive era of the larger scene in general. So many talent is waiting, like so many different talented drivers are waiting in the wings, and it really takes everything to stay at the top as well as continue to push forward. So hearing these driver stories, that's half of the fun as well as the action on track for me.
I mean, yeah, and Brendan Lee, what a story he has had. Just like mentally, he's completely changed in his past years, and physically as well. I mean, looking at his Twitter is honestly a treat, because he looked completely different from when he started his F1 sim racing journey. You look at him now, he is in some fantastic condition. He's a real inspiration to everyone, I think, personally. And I might be getting a little bit soppy here, but like, he's always been that driver that I've sort of idolized, which is weird, because I'm commentating on him week in, week out. I'm getting to talk to him like he's my best mate or whatever. But for some, I guess it's because in 2017 and 18 I wasn't a part of the league racing scene. I was just watching it. I wasn't commentating on anything. I didn't know anyone. I was just watching these guys go around, and I was watching Brendan Lee winning races. And for some reason, like, you know, he's not, I wouldn't say he's the GOAT, because Jan Otmir has taken claim to that title by far, but Brendan Lee has always had that little bit extra to me of just star power. I don't know why, and I'm so happy to see him take the championship this evening.
Well, you got the buy-in on the story, and he's got, say, that entire sort of chronicled history throughout the entire scene up to now, and it's not hard to see why. It is really a great joy to sort of hear his story and sort of hear where all the different drivers are coming from. So we'll only get more and more of that as time goes on, really. And as more seasons come through, as more seasons start to give us that opportunity to chat with all of the different drivers, we'll really sort of get to see those stories unfold as we see them unfold on track season after season.
And it's living proof that Brendan, that, you know, an old dog can learn new tricks. Brendan Lee will bring it back on your screen, is your champion of WOR Season 18. And truth be told, since round number 6, even round number 4 to be completely honest, it didn't look close at all. What a season he has had. What a season of racing it has been for Brendan Lee. And I'm really keeping both my fingers crossed on both hands here that he can carry that form into the F1 sim racing season. Of course, he doesn't want to think about the form that he's had so far this season when he's taking to that challenge. He doesn't want to think he's the best, but I think in the back of his mind, he knows that he has a very, very strong chance of taking the F1 sim racing championship, which is hopefully coming very, very soon. We still have one more race left here in WOR. We are back to Sunday racing on the 10th of November, one day before I turn 21 years old. Tune in for the Chinese Grand Prix next time by. But for now, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the World Online Racing YouTube channel. And if you haven't already, make sure you follow us on social media. It is at WOR League on Twitter, and then it is at World Online Racing F1 on TikTok. If you want to follow myself this evening, it is at Danfield F1. Sappy, I know it says Richie F1 underneath your name, and truth be told, I've forgotten your handle. Just let us know. Let the audience know what you where they can find you.
It's at Sappytron on all channels, all platforms. So you throw that in, you'll find me if I'm on there. Simple as.
Well, you heard it here first. Sappytron. Make sure you follow him on all social media platforms. And if you haven't already and you want to keep up to date with all your World Online Racing news, you can join the Discord. The link is in the description. That is everything for today. We have crowned a new champion here in WOR, and his name is Brendan Lee. What a season of racing it has been for him, but there's still one more challenge left to go. Who will lay claim to the Chinese circuit? We'll have to wait and see this Sunday. Make sure you tune in at 7 p.m. But for now, that is everything. So thank you and good night.